Hello. I'd like to welcome you on board our flight. We are gonna start our briefing now. So, welcome. My name is 24 Flying, and I'm going to be flying you from Brussels to Torino today. And I'll get my face out of the way and quickly show you. As you can see, I have Navograph up, and it's showing the route that we're gonna take today. So we're gonna do a quick briefing before the flight, and then I'll do the actual flight, and I'll show you all of that from startup. In the background, I have my my A321 already set up, cold and dark still, but with external power connected. Okay, so let's start with the briefing. Our flight will be from Brussels to Torino. We will be taking 9.6 tons of fuel, which will give us and we should be taking off with 9.4, so we have 2 tons extra. Let's see. I did ask for 45 minutes of extra fuel on the arrival side. Just since I will get to that later why I did that. Today we are taking 217 passengers and no cargo, all the way from Brussels to Torino. My flight plan, my briefing plan gave me a payload cargo limited by maximum landing weight. So since the flight is such a short duration, we can't take any more. Also see the maximum fuel that we can take is what we have on board, which is 9.6. That's why. Okay. So let's start. Usually when I do a briefing like this, I like to get the route and NOTAMs out of the way first. Since weather can change last minute and I want to have the most up-to-date weather information. Of course, I already checked everything before I'm talking to you guys. But just in case it does change, I'm gonna go over it again whilst I'm discussing it with you. So in Brussels airport we are parked at, I think it was 151, which is right there. We're expecting a taxi out to runway 7 right, which is down here, so we're expecting either inner or outers here, going all the way down there up to, I think that's Papa 9 holding short 7 right. Once we do get there, we'll be flying the, let's see that I'm not making this up, we will be flying the Rousey 7 Juliet departure, which is, you can see depicted on this chart. 7 Juliet is starting on 7 right, and then we'll be flying it out to Rousey. Then the rest of the route takes us over France, over Geneva, actually next to the Alps mostly, since we are not going up, we are going up to flight level 350 I think. We could fly over the Alps, but that would mean that we have a very steep descent on the Italian side of the Alps. So the flight is so short that it's worth it just going around, since Torino is on the edge of Italy anyway. So the flight plan takes us around most of the Alps. We will have some high terrain though. And then when we get closer, we are expecting the Verbo 1 Bravo arrival, which I have the chart here. Verop, correction, 1 Bravo. So, in fact, let's just straight in to the Charlie Sierra Lima beacon VOR and then from the Charlie Sierra Lima VOR we will be flying the ILS. We're expecting the ILS if possible. So I'm not using any ATC today. I am using real life weather and real life time, but so all the weather stuff in the briefing is going to be correct. However, all of the procedures that I'm going to fly are already decided, since I'm not using any ATC that can change this. And then the approach, we'll brief it when we get there. So our route is pretty much set, and I know where I'm going. I did download the FMS flight data, so I don't have to enter everything manually once we get in the airplane. Gonna see note time-wise, I did check everything. There isn't really anything of note. Most of the stuff is COVID-19 related, but we're in a simulator, so let's just pretend that that thing doesn't exist. Then weather related. So I'm gonna first go over the big picture weather-wise, and then we'll zoom in to the start and end points of our route. So overall, most of our route we will be flying through a zone of moderate icing from flight level 150 till the end of the chart. So I will probably be using anti-ice for the entire cruise section of the flight. I should not forget that. Weather-wise, there is some light turbulence on the southern side of the Alps when we get down to when we get closer to Torino, and we'll probably feel it, but for the rest of the route it's fine. There was a warning, a significant weather warning for mountain waves in Switzerland as well, but we'll be avoiding most of that area, although there isn't much difference between being in Switzerland or being on the Italian side of the Alps. It's pretty close together. Overall, we're expecting tailwinds for the entire flight, which is nice. At 340, the average wind is about 60 knots. Quartering tailwind from the northwest. Tailwind from the northwest. So as I said before, we'll be climbing up to flight level 350 for the entire flight. We expect to get there right at Papa Oscar Golf Oscar Lima. It's a point on the chart. I'll show you. There it is. So right about shortly after the end of the departure leg. It's fine. Weather briefing wise, that's the big picture done. So I'm gonna go over to my METAR data. The Brussels METAR currently says winds 1606 knots, which is starting to favor the other runway, but right now it's still fine. It's more crosswind than anything else. 4,500 meters of visibility in light snow, which is interesting. Then clouds scattered at 1,100, broken 2,100, which is fine. Temperature 2.-1, so explains the clouds. And temperature 1 we will be doing probably a de-icing before we get going, if I can figure that out in the Toliss. QNH 1019er, and the trend is becoming 9 kilometers in light snow, so visibility is improving, that's fine. The forecast for Brussels doesn't give me anything to worry about, really. Might give some rain more as well, but that's fine. Then the current METAR in Turin is saying 3304 knots, varying from 300 to 060, but it's quite light wind. And Cavoke 1 degree, dew point -2, QNH 1007. So no clouds, and the forecast also says Cavoke does show that the winds might pick up to 7 knots, but it's still fine. So weather-wise we're doing great, there isn't anything to worry about really. That part of the briefing is done. Exciting. Means that we can get going pretty soon. So I did file the flight plan for a takeoff at 9:15 Zulu, which is coming up in, let's see, 30 minutes. So I do have time. It's a simulator, it doesn't matter if I go early or late, but for extra realism I did select the proper time. So if we get going now, we have half an hour to get the airplane all set up, we should be fine. So welcome inside of the cockpit of my beautiful Airbus A321. We are flying Alitalia today, and before I forget, let's get some ground handling up. And open the doors so that... Aha, I forgot I'm at the gate. I don't need all the ground handling. So let's get rid of all of you. And just... and the GPU, that should be enough. So what I want is one left should be open, one right and 4 right should be open, and these will go open automatically when I need them. Is there any de-icing here? I don't think so. Well, let's hope there isn't any realistic ice buildup inside the airplane. So everything is driving up. I'm flying this beautiful new livery A321. It's Echo India X-Ray Hotel, which is actually a real airplane that Alitalia owns. And we are at stand 151, gate 151 at Brussels Airport. As you can see, visibility is quite low, but still good enough that we can do normal operations here. Get the airplane started up. So I'm starting to get more and more familiar with the aircraft. So I think I can go without using the X checklist to get the main stuff set up. And then I'll use the X checklist tool to verify that I did everything correctly. So first of all, these screens are always to dim. When you get in, I'm gonna get this stuff sorted out. So all external power, which is fine, then I can go set up my IRSs or ADIR systems here. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have waited till the on-bat light was gone, but to be honest, it's fine. So what this does, it gives me inertial reference. It help. It sets up my attitude, my heading displays, it calculates wind, and position. So the GPS, it's not really GPS based, but it's inertial reference based. So there's gyroscopes in it, and then the gyroscopes they determine, yeah, when you align them first at the position, it knows where we are, and then it will calculate the change from that position in order to know where we are currently when we move. Very basic explanation. If you want to know more about this, ask me, or I suggest you just read a book about it, because there's a lot to say about inertial reference systems and then that these modern airplanes have now. So I'm going to continue. Select exact sign to captain and purser. This is all fine. The voice recorder to ground mode. This is all fine. Check my fire buttons. Normally I would be looking here as well, but I can't look and press the button as well. So I'm expecting to see engine fire caution, or warning rather. And APU is checked. What I'm looking for is that this big red button lights up, and the script, the agent script buttons light up as well. So I'm just making sure that all lights are out that I'm expecting to be out. Since the Airbus uses a dark cockpit principle, there's a light, it means that there's something non-standard going usually. However, here all is as expected, and get my lights as required. There it is. All those lights are set as required. This is all fine. Shouldn't have to touch all of this, and turn on the third communication unit, which is not really modeled in this airplane. Or it is, but we're not going to use communication systems anyway. I'll just turn it. So the overhead should be fine. Then what else is there to do? Let's go down here. Check that our oxygen pressure is sufficient. Then check that we have sufficient hydraulic quantity. Which is also fine. And then check that we have sufficient oil quantity, which is also fine. I'm gonna go over to the checklist now to see what we have done. So I should request my fuel stuff, of course. So what did I say? I want 9.6 tons of fuel. So let's get 9.6 tons. Request that, and they will deliver 217 passengers, which is pretty cool. And then what I do is I check on the sim brief 0 fuel weight and change the cargo, because the cargo isn't really modeled correctly, until we get the 0 fuel weight that we have predicted. And I have 71.6 now. I need 71.7, which is what I have now. And then apply these load settings. Let's see, why didn't they open the cargo doors? I want those open in order to load. Let's do it manually then. Yeah, that's fine. That's being done. That doesn't need it. We are having more than half passengers, so I'm not switching on econ flow. That's fine. Checked, that's all checked. Now it's automatically checking if I did everything that I need, which I did, except for the temperature controls. So let's see what the temperature is like in the cabin. Hot. We're very, very, very hot. So it's not gonna do anything now until I switch on the APU, unless I request some ventilation. Let's get some ventilation going. So low pressure air is ventilation and high pressure air is for starting, which I don't need now. Then I would check that the battery is in charge. I turn them off, so I go to the electrical page. Switch off that one and that two. Check that the display shows the normals. And go back. I did do the engine fire checks and I did switch on the third communications unit. So our QNH here in Brussels is 1019. Let's set that up. And standby. So the standby is showing what we need. So quickly check my brakes. Brakes are what I'm expecting. Oh. I don't want the gate to go yet. That's very unfortunate. Then I better close all the doors. And dismiss the ground crew. Ah, they're already gone with the release of the brakes. Okay. It's fine. It's checked. 14th of January 2021. I don't know if this is 2020 or whatever, but it's fine. And we don't need a brake fan since we just started up. My radio has come on. I'm not using communication equipment today, so let's leave it at that. Turn the lights all the way up. It's my weather radar, so I'm gonna select the settings that I want for the climb out and set the door to normal. Let's check. Landing elevation is automatically calculated by the computers and our status is normal. Then on the first officer side, he would be doing this obviously. I'm going to turn his communication on, get his light maxed out. This is our transponder unit, so I'm going to switch it on, switch it to the above mode, and leave it on standby. And then we did check that our passengers and cargo are matched with what I have on SimBrief in front of me. So for anyone who doesn't know, I am using a tablet to get my data. I'll show you in a second. So I am using this tablet. It shows my flight plan, weather info, and my route using Navigraph, and I can display the charts here as well, which is very, very useful if we are flying and streaming at the same time. I need to have something to look at to actually know what I'm doing, because when you try to be as realistic as possible, you can't just be flying randomly. Okay, let's set up the McDo, as they like to call it. So the brightness is set up. We are flying an A321 with the CFM engines. AirAC 2014 is still current, and the aircraft doesn't have any abnormal performance factors. We'll go to the init page. First of all, it's very convenient here to load the flight plan. So it's Echo Bravo Bravo Romeo Lima India Mike Foxtrot 01. Sounds like our route, which it is. So I'll enter this here. Our alternate here, I didn't tell you yet, but our alternate is Milan. So it's India Mike Charlie. Gonna enter that in alternate. Flight number, we are Alitalia 413, which is Alpha Zulu. Alpha 413. Enter to the right place. Our cost index calculated by SimBrief is only 5. So I'm not sure what it's all about. But I'm gonna put it in there. And cruising level today is flight level 350. Let's get the winds up. Let's check. And press the Align IRS button. So what this does is it gives my actual position to the IRSs, which already have spun up. Yeah, in this case they ring laser gyros, so they don't actually spin up anymore like in the old days, but they are aligned. They just need to know where they are, and then their referencing can start. So it's still giving me GPS primary lost, which is because they're still aligning since we aren't done yet. Actually, if we want to see how far we still have to go, we can normally there's a display which shows me when I select status or heading selector how long we still have to go till the up. Okay, it's an Airbus, so I can see here in 1 minute they will be nicely aligned. Okay, let's continue. So our flight plan, I did go over the route with everyone earlier in our briefing section of the stream, but I'm gonna quickly go over it as well to see if there's any errors in here, which we don't want. So, Russie, Golf Tango Quebec, Bogle, Lassat, Mergu, Shara, Durso, Arpos, Torpa, Morok, Giller, Golf Victor Alpha, which I think is Geneva, Noblo, Lurak, Virop, and then the arrival. Then Lima Mike Charlie in the end at the alternate, which is what we decided. Then we'll go to the departure airport, select departure, and then nicely enter departure that we're going to be flying. So first of all, the runway. We're expecting 7 rides, unless the weather does change sufficiently. I'm going to check again, what are the winds currently doing? 1304 knots, so definitely 7 rides for departure. Very easy decision to make now. Normally it's not even a decision that we have to make. It's mostly decided by tower. So runway is in. The Ruse 7 Juliet departure or Rouse or whatever those names. Okay, so GPS primary on this display means that we have IRSs aligned. 7 Juliet is the one we want. No transition. So temporary inserts. That's it. Then, because we already know what our arrival is, we can already program it for sure. So we're doing the don't want to make any mistakes, but ILS X-ray 36 X-ray using the 01 Bravo arrival. It's quite down low, I think, with the Victor 1 Bravo there. via Charlie Sierra Lima. No transition. It's in there, temporary inserts, and it's done. So now, as a final check if our route makes sense, because this is a very important part of the flight, that we actually have navigation to get there, then I'm going to select plan mode, get the range down a bit, select constraint, and then by clicking on the M2, we can actually show the route that we are flying on our ND, on our navigation display. So we have the nice departure, going all the way out. That's Geneva. Arrival over at the airport, flying out, and then flying back in. And then the missed approach is also programmed in there. There was the alternate, and then now we are back to Brussels. Our route is matching with what we expected to. So, for our departure today, we are using RNAV waypoints, so on the RadNav page, I don't really care about any of this, except for that I do need to have, I do see it now, so it's asking at 8 DME from the Brussels VOR to start our turn after takeoff, so we need the Brussels VOR in here, which is 1146, it's in both navigation radios, it's in there. ADFs I don't use right now since there aren't any NDBs that we need. So radio navigation is set up that we go back to init but to the B page, and we enter all the performance data that we have. So our zero fuel weight is 71.7, 71.7. Use the slash to indicate that we're filling in the other side. So our zero fuel weight CG is 30.8%. And by entering this, the computer can start to calculate our takeoff, actually our performance data. And, we'll end up having takeoff data as well. So block fuel is 9.6 tons, 9.6 tons. Put in here, it can start calculating our timings. We should have 3.5 tons of fuel extra, which is a lot, but it's in the sim, so I don't really care currently about fuel consumption. In a real airline, obviously, it wouldn't be very economical to take too much fuel, since all the fuel that you take is weight that you have to add, and it's weight that you can't carry as a... Yeah, the fuel doesn't pay to be on board, the passengers do, so if you get more passengers compared to the fuel, it's better. Also, the fuel is heavy, so all the fuel that you do take needs fuel to be burned in order to get somewhere. So less fuel is better in an economical perspective. More fuel is better in a safety perspective. And in the sim, I can totally just care about safety if I want to. So that's what I'm doing. Our reserves, I did talk about them right now, so that's done. Secondary flight plan. I'm not really sure why anyone would use this. As stated, I'm a student pilot and I'm not currently flying an Airbus A321. We'll see. Once I might ever, if I ever fly this, I might know what this secondary flight plan's intentions are, but currently I'm not using it. I'm just copying the active in there. I guess it's just for contingency's sake that you have a secondary flight plan. Yeah, I do think that that's useful if you need to have a different approach planned or a different departure planned, then you can quickly switch. But since I'm just going to be flying what I'm expecting to fly, there's no use. So all of this is fine, and then we go to the performance page, and then I need my calculator again to see takeoff performance. So I'm just quickly checking all possible flap settings for takeoff. Huh. Normally I have to do flaps too, but these V speeds are rather high. These look better. I'm going for flaps too anyway. We can easily do this if we do our normal standing takeoff. So flaps 2 with the active flight plan gives us these values and we can enter it in here. So we'll start with the flaps and trim position. So that's flaps 2 and trim down, so Delta November 0.9. And I'll enter it in the flaps Tango Hotels THS selection. Then flex temperature is 38 as calculated by the tool. These altitudes are fine. I don't know if the transition altitude is correct. I didn't see it yet, so I'll check that out pretty quickly. Transition altitude 4,500, so that's correct. That's what we want. For those who don't know, transition altitude is the altitude at which, if you're above the transition altitude, you should be set on standard baro. So that's 1013 in the QNH, and if you're below, yeah, that's a whole different story. We will get to it when we do the approach. So V speeds 147 for V1, our decision speed, or 147 is it rotates. And then our takeoff safety speed V2 is 150. It's entered in. That's all set and checked. So our CDU Armor 2 pre-flight is correct and set. Then let's continue so we can start our APU. Now I do have to wait until this APU flap opens up, and I'm not gonna be sitting here waiting to do nothing. I'm already gonna pre-plan my pushback, and I'm using the Better Pushback plugin for X-Plane, which is really nice. So I'm planning the pushback out like this.
Run to cockpit, blood knowledge, call me through the menu when you are ready.
Looks like X-Plane is a little loud. I'm gonna reduce that volume a little bit. So the flap is open, APU flap is open, and APU can start. And I can continue the checks. So cockpit lighting is as required, it's all fine. Go back this in 1. So I want VOR 1 on, which is Brussels VOR. I don't need the second version, so I'll switch it to ADF, or I can switch it off since we're not using it. And just to be safe, we'll switch VOR 1 off on this one and keep VOR 2 up, which is also located on the same frequency. So we'll set 1019, but first I'll cross-check that it's actually still the current QNH. Yes, 1019er is still current. That's all nicely set up. And initial climb on the departure will be to flight level 60. Then the first officer side is just constraint on. This is all set. Landing system on. And that's it. So the APU is on. I can go APU bleed on. Let's go check if our air conditioning did work. So the air conditioning did work. It did cool down a bit, but the cabin is still very hot. So I'm gonna switch those down. Colder. And it's already working there. So since we're on APU bleed now, I can get rid of the low pressure air. APU gen is on, so I can't get rid of the GPU as well. So our briefing, just one quick second. So, I am back. I just had to plug in my tablet to get accurate information there because it was running out of battery. So, weather here in Brussels did change a bit for the better. So, visibility is 10k or more, snow is gone, so it's better. There's no need to be concerned about any weather issues for the departure. Runway 7 right, and the departure is gonna be the Rousey 7 Juliet departure, which is what we briefed before. It's fine. Flaps will be 2 and our V speeds are 147, 147 and 150. If there is any engine failure after our departure, before V1 we will stop. After V1 we will continue and climb out and come back to land here in Brussels. Since the weather has improved sufficiently, there's no risk of it being outside of the limits. So that's all checked. So that's our before start checklist above the line completed. Now we would contact ATC. Instead of doing that, I'm gonna do some example calls since I'm not using any ATC for the flight. So I would say to delivery, be on clearance delivery in Brussels, so that's Brussels clearance, Alitalia 413, requesting clearance to Turin. Then they would give my clearance, I would read that back. It would include our departure, our route, our altitude, our initial altitude. So I would set this up and it would give us a squawk code. In this case, I'm expecting it to be something, well, I don't care, but I'm just going to put in 1532, just for fun. Then, since we're ready to go, I'm going to switch on the beacon light. Everyone outside should know that we're ready to go now. And then I would go to ground frequency now. So Brussels ground, Alitalia 413, at stand 151, ready for pushback and start. And then it would clear us for push and start, give us a direction, but in this case everyone gets their noses to the right, tail to the left for the pushback. So this is done. We did pre-plan our pushback nicely, so instead of having to do that now, I can just go to better pushback and
Ground to cockpit. Tow is driving up.
get them to drive up, as he said. So better pushback. I really dig that they have a real pushback truck actually lifting the plane up, actually pushing it back, and they have the most beautiful pre-planning tool. I remember before when I was using X-Plane 11 and this thing didn't really exist yet, I had to do a pushback using something that would push me back, but I had to steer with my rudders or my tiller. Really not that useful. But this is just magnificent. Let's look at it from the outside. Let's check that everything is closed. Everything is closed, yeah, that's fine. As you can see, the truck is really, really nicely modeled. The scoop for the
Okay,
wheels.
all doors and hatches are closed, ready to connect.
Roger, clear to connect. Actually, all of the stuff is animated. It looks so nice. As you'll see in a second, the scoops in front will close, and then it will lift up the nose wheel. See? Okay, it looks a bit strange because it's probably the camera that does it. If you look like this, yeah, this works better, but then you can't see as much. So we'll have to deal with it being a little unrealistic. Now you can see the nose being lifted up. See?
Now connected and bypass pin inserted. Release parking brake.
Okay, so we can release the parking brake. Parking released.
Starting pushback, and you may start engines.
So we can start the engines. Quick check of the engine start procedure. You still know it. Ooh, that's a bit janky. I don't know why it's doing this. But whatever. So, engine start procedure. I'll go with the engine start selector. I do have the Thrustmaster TCA side stick and throttle quadrants, so I can't switch it with the real switch. So I'm switching it to ignition start. Engine page looks good. Nothing abnormal. Then we can go correct that I can go master on immediately. Yeah, that's right. So I can go engine master on, number 2. So the switch gives us N2. So now the bleed air from the APU is driving starter, which is driving, it's actually driving the N2 turbine first, and then the N2 compressor. So the high pressure compressor is being spun up, creating airflow through the engine, which is vital for a jet engine. And when there is enough airflow, which in this case is about 23%, fuel is introduced, as you can see, and the ignition is already on, so the fuel immediately ignites, which rises the EGT, and the EGT, the exhaust gases, they drive the turbines at the back, also the N1 turbines, the low pressure turbines, which then in their own way drive the low pressure compressor in the front and the fan blades, which is N1, and then we will get an N1 increase up to about 20% N1 for a normal start. So that means when we get 20% N1, which we have now, 20, 40 and 60 on N2, which we call a stable engine. So the engine is stable, and you see it's available as well. I'm gonna wait to start number 1 until we are stopped, since I do have to set parking brakes and stuff and talk to the pushback guy before I can looks like I actually wanted to be there. I can taxi over there. That's fine. It must have been a mistake.
Operation complete. Set parking brake.
So parking brake set.
Disconnecting tow. Standby.
Roger. Okay. They will be moving to the left, which is the number 1 engine, but they are aware that I can start them, so I can't start them, for what I'm concerned. So that's number 1 starter on. The same thing happens on the number 1 side, except for we get now the PTU park. It's actually the hydraulic power being, it's a pump that generates hydraulic power, basically. I don't know the details yet. But we have N2 spooling up. And when it gets about 23%, we'll see that the fuel is there. Ignition is already on, as you can see. So the igniters are constantly firing off now, which means that when fuel gets there, it immediately ignites. and N1 starts to spool up, and I want to give you a nice outside view of N1, or a wing view of N1 spooling.
Tow is disconnected and bypass pin has been removed. And signal of the left. We'll see you next time and have a safe flight.
Roger, thank you very much. So we're expecting the tow on the left to show. Let's get my checklist out. So that's all done, and I can start the chrono. Get my APU bleed and APU off. And then we'll look for this guy. Okay, there's the pin, it's fine. Let's go to the flight control page, set the trim position. If you want, it's right there, down 0.9. And I'm looking right here to see down 0.9, this makes sense. Trim is set, engine mode selector to normal. Speed brakes armed in case of a rejected takeoff. And the pushback crew showed the pin, so we are cleared to get away, basically. So I'll go back to, I'll set flaps 2 first of all. Go back to the flight control page. Flaps 2 is set. Then I will test my flight controls. So I have the Thrustmaster TCA side stick, which basically looks like this in real life. And I'm checking on the display that all my actions have the desired result. It's fine. And then that's done. Then the before taxi procedures. You can switch on system 1 for the weather radar. Engine mode selectors. It's not raining anymore, so normal. Auto brakes go to max in case of the rejected takeoff. And the takeoff config test is normal. Checked. In this case, we would stay on ground and now request taxi. So that would be Brussels. We already contacted Brussels ground, so I don't have to repeat their call sign. So it's Alitalia 413, ready for taxi. Taxi via Romeo 4, Mike, inner 8, inner 9, inner 10, and Zulu, hold short, Papa 9, Alitalia 413, correction. So it's basically what we discussed before when I showed you on the plate. It is, if you want to know, you can look back. I can't really show you it right now. But it's basically taxiing alongside the airport building out there, then a right turn, and then we will get to the runway. Not that long of a taxi. And we're ready for it. So briefed and lights as required, parking brake is released. I can get a little bit of power in order to get moving, and then immediately get over to the center line. We're at about our normal safe taxi speed, because we shouldn't be making any hard turns over 10 knots. But it's a simulator and I don't feel like taxiing for half an hour. So I am gonna keep good speed up. Looks like we're slightly to the left of the center line, but I'm correcting for it. This was Romeo 4. Slow down a little. There you go. Right on mic. Looked like whiskey, but it's really mic. And then right again on inner 8 in this case. And then we follow the inner taxiways all the way up to the end. Then make a right and follow Zulu all the way up to the end. And one last look at the Brussels airport buildings, since we will be going to the more sunny Turin. That's inner 9. So we have inner 9 here, then inner 10, and then we make a right on Zulu. Slow it down a little bit for this turn. So for controls on the ground, normally a small airplane you would fly using your rudders. The big airplane uses a nose wheel tiller like this. And since I do have rudder pedals, I am using my yaw axis on my side stick as a nose wheel tiller. It's pretty convenient because the rudder on the if you do try to steer it with the rudder, you will find that it's not sufficient to actually make nice turns, and the nose wheel tiller is really required. I think you can bind it to another axis that it will, I think with the side stick roll motion you can also use it as a nose wheel tiller while on the ground. However, that isn't really required if you have a spare axis. So once we get on the runway, I will lock out the yaw axis on my side stick, make it more realistic, and once you get up to speed, your rudder becomes more effective and you shouldn't be using nose wheel steering anyway. So we're on Zulu now. At the end of Zulu, you see the flashing lights. That is the Papa 9er holding point. And that is where we will be holding short of runway 7 right. Those people in those houses, they must have a great time looking at the airport like this. So since we're approaching the runway and I don't want to be held up too long, I'm gonna get my checklist ready for the before takeoff procedure. So TC not applicable, just get cabin ready. So let's say clear to line up and wait, runway 7 right, Alitalia 413. So stop bar is down, the approach end of the runway is clear and there is no one on there that we can see. I will go strobes to on, then landing lights to on and nose light to take off. Transponder should go to traffic TARA, that's what we want. Advise the cabin crew by using the seatbelt sign twice and turning off the air conditioning packs. Clear to line up and wait, so let's line up and wait. So, clear for takeoff, runway 7 right, Alitalia 413. That's always nice to hear. Get thrust stabilized at 50%. About there. Okay. Man flex 38, SRS, and autothrust blue. Oh, that was a mistake. Get those down a bit. That's 100 knots checked. Flight 6 neutral. V1 rotate. Positive rate. Gear up. Silence the marker, I don't need that now. Autopilot, not turning that on. Lever to climb. Back 1 comes on. Wait 10 seconds. 9, 10. Back 2 comes on. I get the speed brakes disarmed and the lights as required. That's all we can do right now. We're safe on speed, so speed check flaps 1. Good on speed, so speed is checked, flaps up. Let's try to follow the flight directors as much as possible. Oh, there is some wind shear. Okay, climb and maintain flight level 350, Alitalia 413. We would be on departure now. So we passed standard. Should have said that already. It's a real busy thing flying this thing, single crew. And that's the after takeoff checklist is completed. So we are flying the departure now. Still manually flying. So I'm zoomed in like this because it's basically everything that I need to see right now. To me it doesn't matter whether I look outside in this because I'm flying instrument, so I need to maintain an instrument scan. And it's hard enough to look at the small indications anyway, so we are nicely off on our beautiful flight all the way up to Turin. On the departure, this is very, very nice. And it's running smoothly. Approaching 10,000 feet. You can see the purple dot on the navigation display means at that point we would be at 10,000 feet, so that's an acceleration point. The point from which we accelerate from 250 knots, which we are doing now, to our cruise climb speed. As we're approaching 10,000 feet, I am considering turning on the autopilot to start managing the aircraft more instead of flying it. So that's 10,000 feet. Let's get the landing lights on first. And seatbelt signs can come off since it's pretty smooth air. Don't need the landing system lights anymore. And I want to have the airport button active. The reason why we do this is because it gives us... Oh, there's a lot of wind shear. Did you see that? Speed increased rapidly. So, the airport button is really useful to actually see airports near us in case we need to rapidly land. Just a safety thing. Look at those clouds. Really pretty. Let's get on the autopilot. So autopilot 1. Autopilot 1. And we're almost at our cruise climb speed, which is managed by the flight management system. Or in this case, it's the nicely in the cruise. Yeah, not really in the cruise yet. We're climbing to our cruising level. So, I have a proposition. Let's climb up to the cruising level. I'll continue to talk about what's going on. We are at Ramba, by the way, which is a point on the departure still, which is the third to last one. So we only have the retux and browse seat to go for the departure leg. We're not seeing anything in front, so I'm gonna increase the range again. But what I was saying is I'm gonna propose that I climb up to cruising level, and then I'll let the airplane fly itself for a little while. I'll go on a small break, and we'll definitely be back for the arrival and landing into Turin. Might even be back earlier to have a little chat. So, might be interesting to get on my background in aviation. So, ever since I was a young kid, I have been really passionate about aviation, and I did fly a lot of flight sim when I was a kid. Never streamed anything for them, but the reason that I'm streaming it right now is because there isn't really much to do with the aviation industry being really, yeah, it's rather calm in our industry right now in terms of passenger numbers. So I'm looking for alternatives to do and spend my time and be busy with aviation and actually share my experiences and share my flying with anyone, because I was flying on the sim anyway. Might as well just stream it live if anybody was interested. So my background in aviation, I am currently studying an integrated APL course, and I am almost done, but we are on hold currently. So I do hold a commercial pilot's license, and I am partially done with my instrument rating. So what's left for me is to complete my instrument rating and then do a MCC course in order to have a frozen ATPL when I'm done. Of course, for flying in the real world, it's really useful to have a license like that, but in the simulator, anybody can fly. So please don't ever think that you can't fly or stream or do whatever in a sim. You can use it however you want. I don't use it as a game. People can use it as a game. It's not really a game, it's a bit too in-depth, but there's definitely a lot of options out there in terms of airplanes that aren't as in-depth as, for example, this Airbus A321, which is also still pretty easy to get into, to be honest. You just have to read the manual and install a script like X Checklist, and it will guide you through everything. Because I didn't really study the Airbus side yet. I do know more about the Boeing 737, but the Zibo mod 737 that everyone uses in X-Plane, I can't get it to work properly with the navigation software that I have now. There have been some issues, I think, with Navigraph and the Zibo. I don't know where the fault lies, if there is any fault. But basically, when I fly this, it works, but when I fly the Zibo, it tells me that the nav data is corrupted. So it's basically useless, because you can fly it around, but you can't really do anything. Which is unfortunate, because that's a nice airplane to fly. Any other airplanes I do have? I do have this Airbus A321, as you can see, and I do have the flight factor 767 extended. So you have the 767-200, the 300 ER, and the freighter version. And I do like to get a lot of freighter flights done, but those are more long haul, and I usually leave them on overnight. It's not really, an overnight stream. It's not really possible, unless you really want to see that, and I might do something like that. So we've just passed Ritax, and we're going on to Rousey. Currently I'm looking on my Navigraph chart to see if we are doing fine route-wise, which we are. If I extend further, you can see our top of climb is just past Golf Tango Oscar, which is the Golf Tango Oscar is the VOR or something like that. I can't really. It's not Oscar, it's a Quebec, so it's called Tango Quebec. And it's in France. So let's see, we are 26 miles from Rousey. I do want to see what our fuel should be at Rousey. And it looks like we already burned quite a lot. So Rousey we should have 8.1 and we are at 7.8 already. Interesting. Let's monitor the fuel prediction page. It's predicting that we have 5.9 at Turin, and I do see that SimBrief says that we should have 6.1. So I'm gonna monitor this more closely during the cruise phase of flight. It's very important to not run out of fuel. Yeah, I did write this down, and I totally forgot. There's moderate icing forecast. So it doesn't mean that you're not in the cloud, that you can't have any icing. It's far less likely though, so I'm gonna turn those on for a little bit. If it's telling me that there is no ice detected, I'm gonna switch them off. Because this, turning on the anti-ice, also turns on the ignition system. It's a lot. Consumes energy, and yeah, energy is money in aviation, so yeah, gave you some outside views to look at. Yeah, but it's cold enough. Let's get this back to normal. So we are approaching our cruising flight level of 350, which means that in fact it means that we will be getting to our destination pretty shortly. Or not really pretty shortly. We're on our way. We're well on our way. That's what I'm trying to say. Let's see. So for cruise, I'm gonna set my transponder to below, which means that will scan more lower than above, since we're already pretty high, and it's unlikely that someone will descend into us from above, but it's more likely that someone will climb into us from below. Now let's see. We are approaching Bogle. We should have 7.3 on board, and we have 7.1. So we're still 0.2 short, which is the same as we were before. So there's no negative trend. We just departed with less. Which still was sufficient for the flight, of course. But I should have checked that. Okay. And now we're in Mach mode and alt cruise, so it will maintain the Mach number and cruising altitude. I did switch off the anti-icing because there was no ice detected and it only consumes more fuel. So we don't want that if it's not necessary. For the cruise flight part, I'm going to take a break because I'm getting a little hungry, and I will see you guys when we get to our descent. Bye bye. Hello there, welcome back. Currently we are approaching our top of descent. So what it's telling me is our top of descent is in 60 miles, which means that we can start preparing our descent. So what it wants me to do is check in that the arrival is all programmed in as we need it. I'm gonna grab my tablet again. So let's see. We have the ILS X-ray off runway 36 in there, the Verop 1 Bravo arrival via Charlie Sierra Lima, which is what we want. It's all set up. So it's prompting me now to enter the destination data, which I am doing. Radio and navigation aids are as required. Charlie Sierra Lima is in there. It's set. Then go back to performance. The descent is managed. The approach. I am checking out the current weather in Turin. Current weather QNH is 1007. Temperature is 7. In this case with a dew point of -1, which is quite nice. Wind is let's see, variable at 4, so the forecast is saying 330 at 7, so let's take 33 0 at 4. Transition flight level, I don't know because we don't have ATC. We'll just take 50. And let's go back to the approach plate. Currently the weather is nice to a Cat 1 approach. This case, the minimas for that are 222. I don't know if it takes 222. It does. So that's the minima for a Cat D airplane as we are. And we are using config full, which gives us an approach speed of 150 and an approach landing speed of 145. That's fine. Then auto brakes. So let's look at the airport. We're landing 36. Probably want the Yankee to, we want Charlie or Bravo to exit. So I'm gonna go auto brakes medium because they are not very far out in the runway. It's about halfway through the runway, so I want to brake quickly. And I'm not gonna go max because why would I? So medium. Let's just take medium. It's already firm enough. Then go back to the FMC, to the go around page. The speeds are in here and the altitudes are also in here. Then fuel prediction. So still enough fuel at the destination to go divert and have some left. So that's fine. The arrival is in there. We are 22 miles from the destination, from the top of descent. Gonna reduce the range a bit, then I can actually see on my ND. Can I see it already? No. Where is it? Oh, it's at Geneva. Huh. Yeah, I didn't see it because it was there at Geneva. Pretty cool that we can start our descent overhead Geneva already, which means we are almost there. "15 miles, so I can look at what altitude I need to have set up. The initial approach fix tells me that I need to be at flight level 130, that can't be right. Okay, it's flight level 130 is the initial approach fix altitude. I checked. So we are currently 8 miles away, so I'm definitely gonna set that up now. 130. Once we're 3 miles away, I'm gonna pull the altitude button. Or push. I've only flown this in the sim, I don't know what it's really like in real life. There it is. Mark descent. There is our pre-calculated glide path, or descent path, rather. Okay, so since we are going to be descending into terrain, I'm going to select my terrain display on, throttle idle. So why do I keep saying stuff that appears on my flight mode annunciator? It's because you have to. You have to know and be aware of what your computer is doing with the airplane. So by the difference between throttle idle is that and speed or Mach mode is that when it's Mach mode, it's actually trying to maintain the speed or Mach number, but when it's throttle idle, it's just throttle idle. So that means that you're being rather efficient in your descent. Remember, increasing speed, that's fine. Okay, let's fasten those seat belts. And this is all fine. We'll look outside, you can see the beautiful Alps. I don't look outside enough. So, oh, that's a beautiful peak. Now with these clouds, oh, everything is looking so majestic. I really can't believe that it's running so smoothly. I always have issues with big clouds and stuff, especially when I'm streaming. It shouldn't work, but it does. Beautiful. Even though it's just a game. I can only imagine what it's like to be sitting in the cockpit of an airplane, flying this approach. Must be amazing. Let's see, where's VROB? There's VROB, so we're coming closely. Normally, if I'm not mistaken, Turin should be behind these mountains. Turin itself isn't in the mountains anymore. So, we're expecting some turbulence here because of the mountains that are here and the wind blowing over them. So, as I showed before, did I show it? I couldn't have showed it, no. So, wind is coming from a northeasterly direction. No, correction, northwesterly direction. Which means that on the southeasterly side of the Alps, you'll have a lot of rotors, as they're called. Is the wind going over top of the mountain and then spinning around, creating lots and lots of turbulence. I don't think X-Plane simulates this well, but you get special lenticular clouds is what they're called. They look like spaceships. Yeah, I can't see any, but in real life you would probably get some lenticular clouds. Oh, this is pretty. There's a little alpine village with a big alpine mountain. We're at 25,500 feet. And what did I say? The QNH was 1007. I should have that ready in my head when we get lower and pass through the transition altitude, transition level correction. Because when you're, I promised to explain this. So when you are, when you're in the flight levels and you're descending to an airport, you need to get back to the local QNH of that airfield. And in order to safely do this, they pick the transition level as being the level at which you should be on. If you pass the transition level, you must have already changed to the local QNH. And the transition level is the lowest flight level above the transition altitude, actually. So that means that in between the transition level and the transition altitude, there is a layer in which any aircraft can have either the local QNH or the standard baro set. So they want to keep that as low as possible, that transition layer, that or as thin as possible, that's what I should say, in order to not have any conflict there, because people are using different altimeter settings. So in this case, we're guessing flight level 50, but I'm not sure. So every day, depending on the atmospheric conditions, ATC decide, or the Met Office of the ATC department decides whether what their transition level will be, and it changes throughout the day. It can change throughout the day at least. If it's a really stable day, it will stay the same. It just depends on what the QNH is compared to 1013. If there is a big difference, they're gonna have to have a big difference inside the transition level as well. It looks like a big difference, at least in numbers, but when you actually apply them, it will be still approximately the same distance between in terms of transition layer. That's the whole point of changing the transition level, dependent on the local QNH. So we're picking up some terrain. I'm gonna decrease the range here. We're starting star pretty soon, but we are perfectly visible with all terrain, so we shouldn't be worried. The high Alps are to our left there. It's really the high peaks. I don't think I have any mods installed for making them look this nice. Yeah, I'm talking about how nice they look. Of course, when you compare it to FS 2020 or whatever, if you have a very graphics intensive mod, it should be a lot more beautiful. But compared to what I'm used to seeing, this already looks pretty nice. So everything is looking very nicely stable. So for sure when we get to the arrival, I think I'm gonna fly manually, because I want to actually fly and show you how I fly instead of letting the autopilot do everything. But I want to be sure that everything is set up as I need it, because I can't go switching on landing lights and stuff, so I'm gonna do that right now. So landing lights are on. Let's see if the checklist says anything else. Engine mode selectors as required. Landing lights are on. Seatbelt signs are on. Yeah, let's go to constraints. And we can actually see our altitude constraints on the display. Maybe I can even reduce a bit further. Yeah, that's nice. Landing system active on both since we're flying ILS, and yeah, we are not switching yet because it's flight level 130. That's the limit on the Charlie Sierra Lima initial approach fix. So we're at the initial approach. We are at the beginning of the star now. Basically, I took over manual control now. If you look outside pretty quickly, that's the airport. So we're slowing down now to, I think it wants 230 knots over Charlie Sierra Lima. We don't have to do a holding, so we go straight into the approach. At Charlie Sierra Lima, we can start a descent to 6,000. So I set up 6,000. Descent on. And approach phase is activated. So we're at the end of the star. Let's alert the crew. get our checklist done. $6,000 is 6,000, so let's get 1007 in. And approach checklist is completed. So it's warning me that we're actually not at the transition level yet. However, that is not important since we are in a continuous descent. I'm not leveling off at the flight level, I'm leveling off at an altitude. And see, I'm not flying that precisely because I'm focused on other stuff. I want to get speed. Down to 230. And have the approach armed. Second not applicable. So we're doing cat 1. There it is. I'm not slowing down. Need some air brake to get flaps in. We're waiting for 18 DME. That's all in the system here. It's getting a bit bumpy. Okay, we can start our descent to 4,000. Okay, we're on flap speed now, so speed is checked, flaps 1. Pretty bumpy. So I'm getting a little quiet now. Okay, speed brake is still out apparently. It's armed already. So we're on altitude constraint now. I think it has a different approach compared to what I have in front of me. There's no 5,000 feet restriction. Okay, descent again. Lokestar. Try to keep following this. Okay, flaps 2, speed is good, flaps 2. It's really rather bumpy. Localizer. So on final, I'm going to go gear down. And we're below flaps, so speed check flaps 3. 3 in there. Alt star, altitude, half scale deflection. So Speed check flaps full. Nice and bumpy here today. Once I intercept the glide slope, I can set glide star. Okay, so the missed glide slope. Missed approach is 5,000 feet as well. And get my lights on. Landing checklist complete.
$2,500.
Checked. And we're stable. I'm wondering if there's a lot of wind, because there is a lot of turbulence. Let's see, there is a lot of wind here, so we're gonna have a lot of wind shear if the wind is still calm. Variable
2000.
4. Okay. Cabin is secure. And landing no blue. Slightly below the glide slope, but on the localizer. I'm correcting. At the outer marker. Okay, wind is decreasing rapidly now.
1,000.
Stable, continuing. And missed approach altitude is set.
$500. 400.
100 above.
300.
Minimum.
Landing.
Line.
200. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20.
Retard.
10.
5.
Okay. That was okay, I guess. Not the best landing I've ever done. Definitely not the worst I've ever done. There it is, Bravo. So we didn't make Charlie. Get my nose wheel steering released. Slow it down till 15. Okay, I guess that wasn't too bad. We are clear of the runway. Parking brake is set. Let's watch some replays. Yeah, so with the Toliss, there's an issue with the speed brakes and stuff not matching completely with what actually is happening. Let's see. So I didn't have my speed brakes out right there. They automatically deployed when I landed. Or looks like I'm to the right of the center line. And it was a firm landing for sure. Let's see what the tower guys would have seen. Looking pretty stable. What went wrong? I think I did apply some rudder to try to decrab at the end. And I did flare a little high. Oh, it was actually okay. The way this looks, I'm actually pretty happy about it. Let's see what our dear passengers must have seen. Pretty smooth. I would be a happy passenger. One final replay view. I like this wing cam quite a lot. It's very unfortunate that we have the speed brake issue though, because the deploying of those, oh, it's beautiful on this airplane. Looks like I did land on the center line. Huh. I guess the oleos of the plane did their job. So let's get out of replay mode and taxi into the gate. So after landing procedure. Everything up. Stand by, get my call on. So we did an hour and 12 minutes airborne, which is actually better than expected. And we are taxiing via Yankee to the ramp. And Yankee is that way. Left turn on Yankee at least, that's also still Yankee. Okay, let's do our flow. So, welcome everyone, welcome to Turin. I hope you did enjoy this flight. I am going to show you the shutdown procedures and everything else, and I will be uploading this to my channel for if you want to rewatch it later. I am going to cut out the boring cruise part though. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you will enjoy what's coming next. Let's see, we were at the APU procedure, flap is open, so we can start. Thrust is idle and we are still getting quite fast. It's a nice plane. spooling up. Might be interesting to see. You also have a rotation and an EGT on an APU, because an APU is a jet engine, a small jet engine. Doesn't provide any thrust, but it provides power because there is a generator connected to it. We're getting a little fast. I'm gonna try slow it down a bit. APU is available, and when we get closer, I'm going to switch off the right engine. Coming in on Yankee, and I have the plate here that should tell me where to go. So I don't want November. That's GA. I want to continue on Lima. And Lima up to the main apron. So there is aircraft stands here. But I'm gonna be picking one of these since I am an Alitalia flight. And I am sure they get their priority here for a proper gate compared to a stand. However, I don't think these gate thingies work, the air bridges, so I'm going to have to use the stairs anyway. Let's take this one. Engine 2 master off and the lights off that we don't blind anyone. Oh, it's a bit too much brake. So currently our right engine is off, which saves us a tiny bit of fuel. And I'm gonna be using the outside view to cheat a little bit to see where I have to stop. Let's stop it here. Set transponder off, APU bleed comes on, engine master 1 turned off. Let's open the cockpit door and let the people loose. Okay, the rest of the shutdown checks are all the fuel pumps off and the beacon light off so people can approach. Now reset this transponder. Then of course we don't want to be on APU all day, so I'm going to give it external power. And that's it. So I'm not gonna go switch it off. We assume that the aircraft will go somewhere after this. But let's get people there. So, as everyone is driving up, I hope you really enjoyed this stream, or video if you're watching it after. If you did, do consider subscribing to the channel, because I will be doing more of this, and like the video if you liked it. Well, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.